if you told me 2 years ago that I would be standing here today as president of the Canadian Bar Association, I would have thought you were dreaming in Technicolor. Je suis membre de l'ABC depuis 21 ans. J'ai présidé de la section de droit fiscal provincial il y a plus d'une décennie. Mais, même si j'ai siégé au comité national mixte sur la fiscalité et si j'ai donné des exposés dans le cadre de certains événements de l'ABC, je n'ai jamais été l'image du membre engagé. L'un, c'est quelques mille bénévoles auxquels se fie l'association pour mener à bien son travail. Président, moi, je pense que non. Standing here today, speaking to my family, friends, and fellow CBA members is surreal to me because of where I was 2 years ago. I hit my personal nadir in 2016. I was recuperating from open heart surgery to repair a birth defect, and I'd fallen into a deep depression. I was still carrying around my heart association pillow to cope with the pain of coughing, sneezing, and even laughing. Suffering from depression, a common side effect of bypass surgery, which had me basically confined to my recliner, my couch, and 3 beds that I had scattered throughout the house, one in the basement, a hospital bed on the main level, and my regular bed on the top level. I could barely contemplate a shower, and frequently wondered, while I was blankly staring at the television or doing a puzzle book, if that was how I was going to be spending the remainder of my life. Fortunately, I'm lucky that my wife April recognized the signs and helped me get help, both therapy and drugs. But even with those interventions, returning to work was difficult. It was a daily mental struggle because I had not yet found a purpose to replace the purpose I once had as managing partner of this fine firm prior to the surgery. Then I got an email in February of 2017 seeking applications for the CBA Board of Directors. And I thought, well, I have time. So I filled out the application at the encouragement of my friend and partner, Doug Tupper. I sent in the application on the application due date. For those of you that know me understand that I tend to do things at the last second, and this was no exception. I was fortunate to be recommended by the nomination committee and elected by the electorate to the board of directors. I then discovered in May that the vice presidency was open, so I sought election as vice president because I had once again found my purpose, to try and help make this fine profession better for my daughters, both of whom intend to be lawyers someday. Over the last year and a half, with help from Carrie, past President Renee Bass, Cheryl Farrow, Tina Tucker, and many others, I've now found my bearings and formed many new friendships along the way, and I am grateful to all of you. I also realized quickly that I was climbing a steep learning curve. The CBA is almost like taking an immersion course to learn a new language, while that language itself quickly evolved. En tant que membre, no, this is a bad idea to have it green, du conseil d'administration qui a mis en œuvre la nouvelle structure de gouvernance et qui a dû prendre des décisions difficiles quant au budget de l'association, j'ai directement aux connaissances des défis auxquels était confrontée l'association, mais aussi des possibilités qui s'ouvriront à elles. Je prévois faire avancer ces processus tout au long de mon mandat et maintenant l'accent sur le renforcement de la valeur et de la satisfaction pour les membres, les deux grandes priorités du SAE dans son ensemble. As you know, for CBA members here, we have been conducting quarterly surveys of our membership over the past year. At this point, each member will have been contacted for 2 surveys. We've asked our members questions about what they value in the association, what advocacy priorities they want the CBA to focus on, and how they like to get their news. The short answers to those 3 questions are advocacy and professional development, access to justice, and send us news by email, but if you would please kindly stop sending us email. This year, the board has selected 2 advocacy priorities based upon those membership surveys: access to justice and solicitor-client privilege. We'll be working with our members over the course of this year to develop action plans to advance these 2 issues and figure out which aspects we'll be taking on. For example, within Access to Justice, our Access to Justice Committee will be talking about providing adequate resources to the courts, including filling judicial vacancies and making the courts more tech-friendly. We've made submissions in the past on ways to streamline court processes, for example, unified family courts, and we would expand upon those. Solicitor-client privilege is the other advocacy priority for the year, and intrusions into solicitor-client privilege must always be very carefully examined, for solicitor-client privilege is at the hallmark of the operation of our democratic society. In terms of solicitor-client privilege, we will be monitoring the common interest privilege case that we intervened on this past year, IGG Gillis Holdings, as it sort of proceeds to the Supreme Court of Canada. We will be also making submissions on privacy law legislation at the provincial and federal levels, stressing the need for properly written legislation to protect privilege and balance those competing interests. CBA presidents also get to set their own personal priority for the year. As I alluded to earlier, I have 2 daughters who plan to enter the legal profession. Like any father, I want to make sure that this is a good place for them. Because of them, and because it's the right thing to do, I intend to use this year to speak about inclusivity and diversity in the legal profession. And I say it in that order intentionally, because I see inclusivity as the path to achieving true diversity in this profession. Without inclusivity, you are, to use one of Barack Obama's analogies, just putting lipstick on a pig. La diversité et l'inclusivité n'englobent pas seulement mes filles et vos filles, ni seulement les personnes faisant partie de la riche mosaïque ethnoculturelle et socio-économique ou celles ayant différentes orientations sexuelles que l'on retrouve au Canada, même si toutes ont une place importante. When I speak about inclusivity, I'm not talking about finding a place for understanding or accommodating people who are differently abled. I'm also talking about finding a place, who are differently abled. Talking about making conversations about mental health is easy and common as discussing cancer or the flu. The CBA advocates for lawyers. I think it's also time that we advocate for mentally healthy environments for us to work in. I do understand what this looks like. Cisgendered, middle-aged white man speaking about inclusivity and diversity. And I'm not here to mansplain that to you. I don't have an answer, but I do have an understanding, because I also felt exclusion when I was growing up. I had an itinerant upbringing. We moved frequently, and I was the professional new kid in school. Layered upon that new kid in school status was my preferences for the Rubik's Cube instead of rifles, Coca-Cola over coffee, computers over cars, and chess above all. So, I've experienced the pain of exclusion. I recognize that my experience pales in comparison to those who have been excluded for their gender identity, their sexuality, their skin color, or religion. But I do have an understanding, because I've experienced it as well, based on something I had no control over at a sensitive time in my life. I've also talked about my own mental health issues, and I will continue to do so, because I'm continuing to get treatment. These are issues I'm still dealing with 2 years later. But I live and I learn, and the more I talk to people whose backgrounds are different than my own, the more I appreciate the work that has to be done to make this profession a truly inclusive one. Tout le monde est des préjugés. J'ai pris un test d'évaluation des partis pris implicites donné par l'université Harvard il y a quelque temps, et j'ai découvert que je n'étais même pas conscient de certains de mes partis pris. De fait, ce ne sont pas les préjugés qui sont les vrais problèmes, mais bien de ne pas reconnaître ses propres préjugés et de ne pas tenter de les vaincre une fois qu'en devient conscient. C'est ce que j'ai fait en tant qu'individu, et c'est aussi ce que j'espère d'accomplir à l'échelle de l'association. So, to repeat that in English, all of us have biases. I took the Harvard University's implicit bias test a while ago and discovered a few I didn't know I had. The problem is not with the bias itself. The problem is not recognizing your own bias when it occurs and not trying to overcome it when you've recognized it. It's something I'm trying to do on a personal level and something I hope to expand to include at the association level as well. I'm already working with the Women Lawyers Forum on their compensation initiative this year. I'm proud that Vice President Vivian Salmon, who's sitting right in front of me, is leading the creation of our first ever leadership conference for lawyers of color in the spring of 2019. Together with the CBA Communications Department, we are creating some podcasts that we're going to call Conversations with the President, where I'll be speaking with members about their experience with exclusion and steps that we can each take to become more inclusive in our behaviors and in our lives. If any of you have any ideas for how we can take forward diversity and inclusivity initiatives, I invite you to share them with us. I can be reached at president@cba.org or on Twitter at @RayAdlington. Data is an important factor when it comes to diversity and inclusion initiatives. Gathering statistics on our membership will help us gain a clearer understanding of trends in our profession and develop appropriate programming. I invite all members to visit cba.org/identity or, en français, cba.org/déclaration to self-identify. It's going to be a busy year. Structurally, the CBA is a different place than it was 2 years ago. We have work to do there, and our business objective remains simple: more members and improved member satisfaction. We've chosen important priorities to focus our energies on, all the while keeping member value at the forefront. I'm looking forward to working with all of you this year. Vous êtes prêts à commencer?